Hey there, welcome to the next episode of my Beginner Gardener series. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about plant light requirements. In the last video, I did discuss some of the light requirements for planting, and so I will be talking about that again at the end of this video. If you did miss the first episode, I will link it here and put it in the notes below so you can check it out. So the most important part about gardening is having the right amount of light. Of course, plants use photosynthesis to grow, and that requires light. So this is why we want to make sure that we put our plants in the best possible place to receive as much light as they need to grow. There are three different kinds of light that exist in the gardening world. There is full sun or part shade, and the final one is full shade. When you have full sun, it means that your garden is receiving at minimum 6 hours of direct sunlight a day. Part sun is when your garden is receiving anywhere from 3 to 6 hours a day. And full shade is when your garden receives 3 hours or less of sun. If you're growing a vegetable garden, pretty well every vegetable out there wants full sun. There are a few that can handle part shade or part sun, but mainly all vegetables are looking for that full sun. Here's a few examples of vegetable plants that look for full sun. It includes tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, beets, radish, beans, carrots, cucumbers, and many more. A good rule of thumb is that if the plant is producing fruit, such as a tomato or an eggplant, it's going to be looking for that full sun. Veggies that can handle part shade include lettuce, leeks, spinach, so more of your salad leafy greens, those ones can handle part shade. If your garden is in part sun but gets around 5 to 6 hours a day, you could push the limits and grow some other things. Brassicas like broccoli and cauliflower, they do like full sun, but in the heat of the summer, they also really enjoy shade. So those are some other vegetables that you can try and grow in your garden of part sun. So vegetables that prefer shady gardens are pretty well non-existent. If you do have 3 hours or less of sun, assume that you won't be able to plant in your garden except for mushrooms. So if you enjoy eating mushrooms, that one is worth trying to grow because they love shady and humid areas. So when you're trying to determine how much light you have in your backyard, there are two important factors that you're going to want to be aware of. So the first is that the sun sits on the horizon at different parts. So during the summer solstice, the sun is going to be at its peak. It'll be as high up in the sky as you expect it to be during the summertime. And during the winter solstice, you'll notice that the sun is sitting a lot closer to the horizon than it does in the middle of the sky. So when you're trying to plan where your garden is going to go and how much light you have, keep in mind what month of the year it is and how close you are to that summer or winter solstice. One fun activity you can do is find a window in your home where you can see the sun rising or setting. And every couple of months, use a piece of tape, such as painter's tape, and mark where it is rising on your windowsill. If you started in the spring and do it all the way through to the late fall, closer to winter, you'll notice that the sun is moving from one side of your window all the way across to the other, or depending on where it rises in your window, it might not even be rising in your window anymore by the time winter comes. So the reason that this is important to note is that the shadows from trees and fences or any other type of structure near your garden will move depending on the time of the year. So some parts of your garden look really sunny in the beginning of June, but by the end of August or September, they can be really shady because of how the sun has moved. And that is when you have your garden in peak harvest time. So you just want to make sure that your plant is getting sunshine through the whole season. The second important item to note about light is that the time of day matters. So sunlight at 8 a.m. and sunlight at 1 p.m. are very different in their intensity. So if you get sunshine for 4 hours in your garden from 8 a.m. to noon, or 4 hours from noon to 4 p.m., your plants treat that light very different because of how intense the sunlight is. I've had gardens in my past that I thought were shady because they don't get a lot of sunlight, but they did get sun from lunchtime through to mid-afternoon, and plants that shouldn't have survived in that type of lighting were doing really well and thriving, and that's because of how intense the light is during the middle of the day. So if you learn that your lighting on your garden comes during that midday light, light, you could push the limits on what you can grow in your garden a little bit. So don't feel discouraged if you only get 5 hours of light. If that light is from 11 a.m. till 4 p.m., you have some pretty good light for your garden. So the final part of today's video is also your homework. It's how to assess light in your garden. So what you're going to do is you are going to pick the spots that you want to make your garden, and you're going to figure out just how much light you get in that specific spot. If you have a couple of areas that you're tossing up on where you want to build your garden, this is the perfect activity for you to help decide where you want to put it. So the reason that we want to do this is a lot of times we think our garden is sunnier or shadier than it actually is. And so this is going to help us determine exactly how much light you get in your garden. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick a day that you're home all day, and it should really be a sunny day that you're doing this. You're going to take your phone and you're going to set an alarm for every hour from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And when that alarm goes off, you're going to take a picture of the area that you want to put your garden in. Once you're done taking that picture, put it through a text editor and add the time that you took the photo, because it's a lot easier and quicker for you to see what time it was when all of these photos were taken. And then once 5 p.m. passes, you can flip through your photos in order of hour, and you'll be able to see how the sun moves across your yard or wherever you plan on putting your garden. And you'll be able to see exactly when the sun hits, where the sun hits, and where shadows are hitting the prospective areas of your garden. Depending on what time of year you're doing it in, such as spring, you do have to realize that if a tree is casting a shadow, it may not have its leaves on it yet. So you want to make sure that you understand how the shadow looks when there are leaves on the tree, because it can cast a larger shadow than you realized. However, this is the best way that you can really assess how the light is, and then not only do you know where you want to put your garden based off how long the sun is there, but you can actually plan your garden around it as well. If you only have one area that you can put your garden and you're going to put it there anyways, you can plan based off if the shadows are hitting in the afternoon. You can put your crops like lettuce and spinach that don't like afternoon sun. You can place them in the area where that shadow is being casted, and you can make sure to plant your tomatoes or any other heat-loving varieties in the areas where there is no shadow and they're going to get full sun in the heat of the day. So I do recommend doing this activity 3 times in the year. You would do it once in the early spring, once in the middle of summer, and then once in late summer, early fall. That way you can see exactly how the sun is hitting. And again, because you know how the sun hits your garden in spring versus late summer, it'll help you plan exactly where you should plant each of your plants. So if you already have your garden in place, this activity is still really helpful because of that planning factor behind it. So don't discredit this as something for only people who are building a new garden, but this is actually really helpful information. And even after all of the years of my gardening, this is still a really helpful activity for me to do as well. And that's everything for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and send this video to anyone else that you know is getting into gardening this year. I hope you've learned something, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.